Okay, here it is. So
What's
what's the best thing to do when you've made a
Made a
mistake?
mistake.
For example, the people involved in the cargo ship,
Oh.
ooh, that got stuck, or this guy just sick burn this moment, got stuck,
Hey.
or maybe simply just making a bad decision.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it could be. Yeah, like sometimes it's hard, and I just want to say two perspectives here,
Okay.
right? And the perspective of the question is when you've made a mistake.
Mhm.
Right. I just wanna throw it out there. What about if you're the guy observing someone made a mistake, right? It could simply be just making a bad decision.
Right.
I mean, that ship has nowhere to go but straight, right? So I mean, but then again, there could be a lot of factors, and so if we assume, what am I saying? If we're assuming right away worst case without going in and trying to understand, right, what could be happening and touching in with the person, that's it doesn't make the mistake any less worse. What I'm saying is, are we? If I'm the one leading this person, am I making this into a learnable opportunity so it doesn't happen again?
Right.
Right. So having said that, let's park that and let's go to the question. So what's the best thing to do when
you've
you
made a mistake.
made a mistake? Off the top of my head, pa, what I'm thinking, alam mo ba? Do you know you've made a mistake?
That's true. That's a
Have
very
you
good question.
accepted the fact that you've made a mistake?
That's
right?
a fantastic question.
Because it's hard to think about an answer to this when you feel like you didn't make a mistake, but everyone else is saying, hindi, mali yan, that's a mistake.
Well, I think that's a great question, Lippy. And I think it's something that many of us, myself included, obviously, fail to ask. Do I know that I made a mistake, for example? I think, and so Raymond just came in with his own opinion here. So he says, acknowledge and apologize, come out clean. Now and soon the problem will be part of the past. Deny it will be a bigger problem in the future. And I think that this is generally true, I think. So if just going back to what Lippy shared, first, yes. Maybe have that sense of pause, perhaps, to recognize that something's wrong. And it isn't necessarily the point where you say I made a mistake yet, but something's wrong. Like if we were to go to that cargo ship, obviously there's something wrong because the canal is totally blocked and other boats, other ships cannot pass. So there is something wrong. So acknowledge first that there's something wrong in the situation. And then perhaps ask the question, maybe what's my contribution to this? What have I done to contribute to this? Or what have I done to help the situation out? Now, Raymond says acknowledge and apologize. I read somewhere, and I understand this. It isn't easy, but I read that the best apology is to simply say sorry. Be specific about what you're saying sorry about, and make it clear that it's about your action. And then stop short of explaining. So, for example, if I did something to hurt Lippy, and I keep doing this, Lippy and myself, because I don't want to single anyone else out here. Since we're the two people on your screens, then let's say I did something to hurt Lippy. I guess the most mature way, I guess, and this is not always easy, it's very often very difficult, would be to simply say, Lippy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I blank. I'm sorry that I said that. I'm sorry that I raised my voice. Whatever it is. I'm sorry I hit you. And stop there unless you know what the impact is. And you can continue there and say, yeah, I know it must have felt really bad. Or I know it must have damaged the trust that we have. If you have that sense of awareness. And then stop short of the explanation. Because very often when we explain, we tend to go, ikaw naman kasi. Kasi alam mo, when you said that,
you're justifying, right? So I'm sorry that this happened. Kasi
pero
naman sila
kasi,
ganito kasi not even the person, but even pero kasi ganito.
Something else, right?
And traffic kasi kaya ganyan, di ba? I mean, it just digs you into a deeper hole.
Then it says, sorry ka ba talaga?
yeah, it's the best thing is really as what Raymond said, acknowledge and apologize. I'm adding another A. It's to be accountable, for what it is that you made a mistake for, right? So if it's something within your your control, right? Do something about it. If you need help, again, don't be, don't be afraid and be humble enough to ask help. Dr. Covey shares in the 7 Habits as part of thinking win-win, right? If you're going to bow low.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And to really be acknowledging and accepting of the mistake that you made.
And,
There,
sometimes,
so we've said a lot of attitudes actually. So just
right.
to bottom line what I was saying, the best thing is really have an attitude of humility and acknowledgement and acceptance. Because what you do is gonna differ from moment to moment, situation to situation. But having a attitude of humility and being accountable and accepting that it is a mistake that you made, I feel would help you figure out what it is you need to do in that
Right,
that
right.
moment.
And I think just going back to, I like what you said, Lippy, about being accountable for it. And I'll also go back to earlier on, you said something about first having that awareness of having made a mistake, and then also trying to figure out what can I do about it. And I think earlier I talked about apologizing and not explaining. My perspective on that is, and this is perhaps the most ideal situation, and I don't know if all of you will agree, would be to say sorry, apologize, acknowledge, own up to it. And then if there is an explanation, if it isn't asked for, like if the person doesn't say, bakit mo nga ba ginawa? Then don't even share it. Keep it to yourself. And to my mind, it's a valid explanation, it's an honest explanation and not an excuse. If when you think about it internally, it allows you to figure out, okay, what can I do about it now? Or what can I do to avoid the same mistake in the future? So it becomes a question to ourselves like, okay, I made a mistake. I hurt this person I didn't intend to. There's a reason for it. But okay, I'll stop short of sharing it now because I don't want to sound like I'm defending myself. I'm blaming, because very often we tend to blame the other person eventually. And just ask the question, okay, if it is a sincere explanation, then what does it allow me to do moving forward?
And Raymond shares in the chat, be like bamboo. The higher you grow, the deeper you bow.
Wow.
This is a tongue twister here.
Right.
And so I just want to add, what else that I feel you could be doing? The best thing also that you could do when you've made a mistake, don't be too hard on yourself.
Oh, true. Yes, don't beat
So
yourself.
let me share a story. There was one time I was with this team and we were going to a company to coach some of their managers. Early morning, and so I talked to my team and they say, where are we going? We're going south. So Laguna was the okay. And then say, okay, we'll meet at the same usual place, right? And so I end up going to our waiting spot if we were going to a project that's up north. And it had not landed on me. And then the team principal calls, our leader, and goes, Lippy, we're outside the restaurant. Where are you? I'm like, I'm here at the restaurant. No, you're not. We just went inside. I'm like, where are you? We're here at so and so in Pasig. I'm like, oh my god, and I just it was like, what? And then then they said we'll have lunch here at this gas station going south, which is just about right. We can shave some time there, and then we'll wait for you. I'm like, okay. So I was on the way, I was beating myself up. But then I thought to myself, well, what happens when I arrive there? Beat myself up again in front of them? It's not gonna help me. So we just laughed it off.
Yeah.
And it just became a funny anecdote between me and my team. So now every time we go south, they will say, "This is where we're meeting, DP. Remember, it's not going to be in that other spot." And that has scared me enough to ask that question again. But what am I saying? It could have gone the other way, meaning I could have not forgiven myself and be doubly hard on myself, right? And imagine, right? You've had your fair share of teams, Pao. And you know what it's like to work with someone who's so self-absorbed and frustrated and angry about something, and how they perform as well.
Right.
So, don't be too hard on yourself.
And so just to go to Lippy's story there, if I were to imagine Lippy having beat himself up and not let go of that negative emotion, again, it's not wrong to feel bad. Of course you feel bad. You made a mistake. once you acknowledge that mistake. But if Lippy had hung on to that, what likely would have happened, if I were to imagine it, correct me if I'm wrong, Lippy, might have been he just sustains that negative emotion even as they're already going in the right way. And people are saying, oh, who's that? And it's just, bad trip. And it's not going to help anyone. It really doesn't do anything moving forward.
That's right.
Sydney has a good point that he shared here. Don't forget to make deposits in the emotional bank account of the affected entity or person. Be deliberate or purposive about the value of the deposit you are making or creating. I think that's a fantastic point. And I think that's the next step. Because it's very difficult to make deposits if we haven't acknowledged the mistake. Very often, if we don't acknowledge the mistake, what we'll be doing is continually withdrawing from the other person because we're defending, we're blaming, we're criticizing, or we're simply ignoring the mistake altogether. But I think once we acknowledge it, allows us to move forward and make those deposits. Sydney, I hope you don't add. This is gold that Sydney is sharing here. Make deposits in the emotional bank account. If I were to simplify this for those of you who aren't familiar with the emotional bank account, it would be basically to do things that you know the other person or the entity would appreciate. Something that would rebuild the trust or strengthen the trust.
Yeah.
Now, if I may add to what Sydney said, I think one of the things that we might want to avoid is the temptation of fixing it all in one go. Like, avoid the temptation of making one giant deposit and saying, ayan, ayos na tayo. Because
especially if it's like a relational issue, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because as we know, trust is built over time. Trust is built usually in the small things. So except for the people I think who've saved other people's lives, literally, very often the deepest relationships with the strongest trust have been built over time, over small interactions that very often we don't even mind on a day-to-day. But it's usually in the hello, how are yous where we actually stop to ask and listen to the answer. Yeah. It's in sharing what we're feeling. And that's where trust is built. And so even those small deposits, just to go back to what Sydney shared, are deposits. So we say sorry. And again, don't beat yourself up. And then move forward and say, so how are you today? Is there anything I can do for you? How are you feeling? So just to bring it back to the cargo ship. Maybe trying to fix it in one go would be literally to just blast the throttle and try to get it out of there, which would be counterproductive. Like dig a deeper hole or destroy the ship.
But even the little digger that's trying to dig like the bulb of the has his own Twitter account and is updating the world that dug a little bit deeper. Ship is still stuck. Like
small deposits every day, right? Small deposits every day, small actions every day. Sydney added,
so yes,
highly conscientious people will always be hard on themselves. That is true. That is true. They need to have an opportunity to atone and make things better. So give yourself that. Yes. Thank you again.
And Raymond is sharing, forgive yourself. That's what Judas denied himself. So this is a Holy Week reflection. And you know what? Maybe some of what we've been talking about here can be your Lenten sacrifice for yourself and for other people. Right. As well, and thank you for that. I just want to put it out there, Sydney. Our next show is April 19. Check your calendar. Get back to our tech guys. All right. Send this guy the invite. We want him on the next show.
Yeah, I think if I may add, and this is coming from what both Sydney and Raymond mentioned. I know I've been monopolizing this particular question, maybe sorry, but
monopolize away.
I think an important point also here is let's assume that you are a responsible, highly conscientious person and not someone who deflects, defends, passes blame. And so you actually take accountability. I think one important step also is to acknowledge to yourself that it's about an action, a behavior, and not about you as the person or not about your character. Because when you start beating yourself up and saying something like, lagi na lang akong mali, or you say, I did it again. I can never get that right. Or let's say that person who crashed the ship, I must be incompetent. Something must be wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And then it actually serves as a barrier. It doesn't help you move forward because now you've actually dug a hole and criticized your character, your person. You've made it absolute.
Let me put it this way, right? When we make a mistake, that's an action. It's an event. It's not a label.
Right. Yes.
Right? You haven't labeled yourself that I made a mistake. It's not I'm a mistake. Or I'm unworthy of, etc., whatever it is, right? So treat it as what it is.
Right. And this is funny, but Amanda, I'm sorry, I will single you out here. But it's funny. Amanda made a comment in our back room pertaining to what Raymond said, and I think it's actually particularly relevant, which is why I'm bringing it up here. I'm not doing this just to single people out. But I like how Amanda pointed us to the words that Raymond used: forgive self. And we feel it's particularly relevant given the Lenten season, given Holy Week, this idea of forgiveness. Of course, we can forgive anytime, and that's really what we encourage. But I think it's a particularly good reminder now for us to forgive not just others, but forgive ourselves. Don't label ourselves, don't dig ourselves into a hole deeper than necessary. And I think that's important.
Nice. Thank you.